Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Delivering Dunamis podcast, where we are inspiring transformation through the strength and the power of the Almighty. My name is Matthew Deibler, and I'd like to welcome you to our second episode of Thirsty Thursday. Thirsty Thursday, yes. We are talking about a thirst that needs to be quenched, and a thirst that can only be quenched by the living water, the Holy Spirit. We're going to dedicate every Thursday to talking a bit about the Holy Spirit. I recognize its power and influence in my life. It's changed my spiritual journey in just phenomenal ways. And so I want to share some stories with you. I want to share inspiration, hope. I want to encourage you to empower the voice of the Holy Spirit in your life. Perhaps give you some techniques to recognize that voice and amplify it. It's so critical. In the season that we are living in, where there is chaos and darkness threatening us at seemingly every corner, we need the Holy Spirit. We need it now more than ever. And so, the one thing that I like to do is I like to celebrate. It gets me really, really excited. And so I'm just thrilled to be here with you and sharing in this series, because I think it's going to be great. My message today, I'm going to call it, I'm crazy enough to do it. I'm crazy enough to do it. Crazy is a word that, it's not a very nice word. Those of us who have, led a journey in mental health or mental illness, we are a bit sensitive to that word, and perhaps rightfully so. I think it's wrong to call anyone who deals with mental illness crazy. The reality is, whether the world wants to admit it or not, there's a lot more like us than there are who aren't. Everybody has essentially their own bucket that they're carrying around, as I call it. Whether it looks like anxiety or depression or addiction or obsessive compulsive disorder, whatever, it doesn't matter. Some of us are more open about sharing that journey with the world. Many will fight their entire lives to conceal it. But it is more common than you would believe. And not only within, that specific individual that you may come into contact with, but also within their families or within their network of friends. I mean, many people have been affected by it, either directly or indirectly, perhaps. So anyway, that's my little word about crazy. Crazy doesn't affect me in a negative way any longer, because I'm okay with who I am. I know that God didn't make any mistakes when He created me, and I also recognize that He didn't make any mistakes in you. And I like the things that make me unique, because they give me an interesting story to share. And that story allows me to impact God's kingdom for the better. It allows me to have a positive effect on his children. And so call me crazy. I'm good with it. You're right. Maybe I am. That's okay. Today, I'm going to focus on the type of crazy that is maybe not limited to just mental health. I'm going to talk about the crazy level of faith that I have as a result of my spiritual journey. So I like to think that I'm a little crazy in the Holy Spirit. And what I mean by that is that, okay, first, let me make it clear. When God acts, when he's involved, it really doesn't make sense to the human mind. You've heard me say this on shows before. When he's involved, it's hard for our brain to process it. So, to somebody who's observing from the outside, it could perhaps seem crazy. And when we ask for things from God, when we ask for, his supernatural healing or his supernatural strength or his supernatural wisdom, whatever it may be, a rational mind could perhaps look at the situation, look at us, and, they could perceive weakness, they could perceive inadequacy, they could perceive very dire circumstances. But when we know the power of God and we've seen it in action in our lives through the Holy Spirit, we don't get involved with the word impossible. We believe on a different level. And we recognize that we don't need to figure out how God does it, how he provides the strength, the healing, how he provides the miracle, how he provides the gift that sustains us in our darkest season. We don't need to know. We just know he's God. And when he acts, it's not going to make sense. And to somebody on the outside, it might seem crazy for us to believe that could come to pass in our lives, but we're okay with that. I'm okay with the world believing that I'm crazy for having that level of faith. Totally good with it. I get excited about having that level of faith because I've asked for some pretty tall orders from God, and he's delivered. And I'm not talking like just one time or two times. He delivers when I ask. And it's amazing. And I'm not saying that I'm talking about things that I ask for that are aligned with his will. I'm not talking about just anything I ask. Like I don't sit in bed at night contemplating all of the creature comforts and riches of the world and then get on my knees and say, you know what, God, I need you to give me $1 million. No, it's not like that. I'm talking about when I recognize his will and I understand that because of the presence of the Holy Spirit in me, and my actions begin to align with that will of God, and I start taking steps forward in faith, and we're essentially working together as one, well, then when I ask, he delivers, because it's not just me asking, it's the Holy Spirit working within me to make those requests. And then, of course, God is inclined to grant those wishes because, and grant the answers to those prayers, I should say, because they are prayers that are formed in his likeness. Now, the message today is I'm crazy enough to do it. So, what do I mean by that? I mean that when I am being led by the Holy Spirit, I don't restrain it. In other words, I don't put a limit on where God takes me. I don't stall in the door when he opens it. So no matter what he gives me, even if the blessing would seem completely overwhelming to my natural mind, or it would scare the daylights out of me and I wouldn't be able to understand how to process it, how I would ever take it on, I just go. Because I'm crazy enough to do it. My faith is that committed. I trust God on a level that I feel as though if he's putting it before me, then it's only gain. I can't lose. Even if the gain is just meant to teach me something, even if it's simply a stepping stone. I won't lose if I go forward trusting his will. God has asked me to do some things recently that don't make sense. I mean, you guys are seeing some of that in action. Many of you have read my book. And you know from the title, if you haven't read it, what it's about. I'm talking about the battle of good and evil and how it played out in my life. I'm talking about 2 direct encounters with Satan. I'm essentially calling the devil out. That, by the standards of the natural mind, seems a bit crazy, but God was leading me to it. He invited me to share the story, and he gave me the strength and the courage to do it. I didn't hesitate. I just went forward, and the story, the rough draft, was done in less than a month's time. Not my strength, God's. I'm crazy enough to do it. Same thing with the podcast. Get the nudge, pull it together in a matter of a few weeks. Now we're into the 30s, I believe, on episodes. I'm crazy enough to do it. I'm not a natural, speaker. I've gotten better at it over the years, but I was terrified about public speaking or, putting myself on a stage or behind a microphone. That was like the last thing that I wanted to do. But God was leading me to it, and I trust him. I believe that he will give me the strength. And so I'm crazy enough to go. Crazy enough to start this podcast. I recently was a guest on another another show. And on that show, there was just this amazing energy. I don't really know how to describe it. All I can say is the Holy Spirit was most certainly present. There were two gentlemen who were interviewing me. It's known as the Exercise Your Faith podcast. I encourage you to check it out. These guys are great. And, listen to my episode, but listen to others as well, because I think there's a lot of value there. And I can just tell you that my experience was divine in nature, because there was just so much that was revealed through that conversation and the conversation that followed after we stopped recording. Now, what I will tell you about that conversation, something was revealed to me there that became very clear the next day. The confirmation that I had the next day was with regards to another big step forward in faith. The seed was planted the day prior, a very significant one. And I recognized that it was the Holy Spirit that was doing it, because I felt it. I felt it on that virtual meeting that day. The step forward is book number 2. I had just finished book number 1. Then here God is telling me it's time for book number 2. Doesn't make any sense. Seems like too much. Just launched a podcast. How is doing some additional work, like where, with 2 little kids and a wife who is pregnant with number 3, where am I going to find the energy to do book number 2? Well, I don't have to know. I don't have to figure it out. If God is calling me to it, all I need to do is trust that He provides. Again, by the standards of the natural mind, it doesn't make sense. But as I told those gentlemen when the seed was planted, I'm crazy enough in the Holy Spirit to do it. And the next day, I got confirmation that I was being led in that direction. And so, I'm going to do it. Book number 2 will be coming. That's my message for you today. You don't need to feel shame in that designation of crazy in your faith life, because when God acts, it is perhaps a little crazy by human standards. It doesn't make sense. It's out of the ordinary. And when you embody the Holy Spirit, you're going to see a lot of crazy. You are. You're going to see a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense. But I will tell you that if you embrace that and you simply go forward in faith, trusting God, oh man, it's amazing what He does in your life. And that obedience to follow that call, it will reward you with more opportunity. Some of it will perhaps stretch you a bit. But if that's what God intends, then go for it. You don't have to figure out any of it. He provides the guidance, the strength, the resources, whatever. He will take care of your needs. He'll make it happen because it's His will and because you are obediently following. Let the world think you're crazy. You know what? Oftentimes it's those of us who are willing to accept that designation. It's those of us who are willing to say, you know what? Yeah, okay. Maybe I am crazy, but I believe. Maybe I am crazy by the standards of the world, but God tells me I'm right where I need to be, and I'm taking the proper steps for my future because that future is aligned with Him. I'm crazy enough to do it. Aren't you?